Hi everybody, let's fly to Rio, Wisconsin. The airport at Rio is public and it's only a little bit north of Madison, Wisconsin. On the chart, it looks like it's only good for Piper Cubs, Taylorcraft, Champs, airplanes of similar performance. Here's the page from the Wisconsin Airport Directory, and here's the page from the VFR chart supplement. You can see that only 1,250 feet of runway is advertised. But we can also see from the satellite views that there appears to be a lot of clear areas on both ends of the runway. In fact, the state of Wisconsin LiDAR surveys, along with the USGS topographic viewers, make the runways look pretty smooth. And looking at the property ownership, it looks like the airport owns this whole entire section of land. Moreover, we can see pictures of Cetabrias, Cherokees, and other similar planes at Rio if we do Google searches. So I called the airport manager, Todd Rote, and I asked him if there was more grass beyond the threshold markers which could be used for takeoffs and landings. According to Todd, there's actually a total of 2,200 feet of usable grass. The airport has been trying to get that published, but the hangars on either side of the extended center line are too close to allow publication of those values. So I flew up there with my Cessna 170, and I took a bunch of videos and pictures so others can get a better idea about coming in here with your typical Skyhawks, Cherokees, things like that. Here's a westbound pass down runway 27. There's not much to mention here. And here's a higher eastbound pass down runway 9. There's a small rise about a half mile off the end of the runway, which is why Rio has their water tower there. And by small, I only mean 100 feet. Here's a landing on runway 27, so you can get an idea of the smoothness, etc. You can see that it's all pretty normal. No special effort was used for braking or anything like that. Normal published approach speeds work fine. Absolutely nothing fancy is required. So let's taxi around and let's take a good look at the runway. Starting on runway 27, you can see these yellow markers. They define the edges of the area that's built up and smooth. I can't use terms like overrun, clearway, or stopway here because these are unpublished data. I'll fast forward a little bit, and here you can see the red cones that mark the threshold. We'll go on down, and over here's the threshold for runway 9. And we come all the way down here to the western yellow markers, and these also define the smooth and maintained surface. As we look a little further to the west before we turn around, you can see the grass gets a little bit taller, and there's a very gentle downslope to the edge of the airport property, which is a beam that stand of pines you can see. Taxiing to the east, as we get to the yellow markers, you can see there's a more significant downslope, and that goes into the roadbed for Highway 16. Looking at satellite imagery, if we land at the 27 threshold, we have a little over 1,700 feet to stop before we hit those western yellow markers and the rougher terrain on the far side. If we land to the east, we have a little over 1,800 feet from the runway 9 threshold to the eastern yellow markers and that downslope we talked about. For takeoff on runway 27, starting at the yellow markers, there's a little over 2,600 feet before you'll cross the boundary of the airport property. And there's a little more distance beyond that because a good neighbor provided a clear area along the extended center line of the runway, but I have not included that in these numbers. Departing on runway 9, you have a little bit over 2,500 feet from the yellow markers to clear the trees on the far side of Highway 16. Why come to Rio? Well, because it's nice here. A 15-minute walk into town takes you to Mama Chaz's restaurant. I showed up on a Friday evening and they were open for fish fry. The pies here are made at this restaurant, so you're not eating a pie that gets shipped in from a commercial bakery. You can also walk quiet roads of town and come in the back way to Johnson's sausage shop. Chris Johnson over there will provide your passengers with whiskey tastings, cheese, meat, and there's a small bar and people seem to be hanging out there. So Rio actually is a pretty nice date option. You can fly in, stroll into town for pie, have your passengers do a whiskey tasting, get some smoked flank steak, a bottle of something good, and some cheese. Todd allows visitors to camp here, or you could fly back out somewhere to continue the date. For transient pilots, Todd, pictured here, is an A&P and IA. He also goes out into the field to provide maintenance as well. Todd offers services typically provided to visiting pilots at other airports. He's really good about taking phone calls and is very supportive. Because Todd allows airplane camping, I should probably talk about toilets. Rio has fantastic flush toilets with hot running water, so you can do airplane glamping if you like. Small airports like these need our support or they eventually get turned into subdivisions. A flight into Rio for pie, coffee, whiskey, and cheese supports small airports and small businesses. For Rio's sake, I hope somebody like the Flying Stampede or Ethan O'Rourke shows up and can make a video with better production values. Thank you for watching.